I breathe up room, no sea bite, it never bites. Fast water dribbling in the girls down in the guys. Fin non see black, you right, fight. OMG, Mac 4, Robin C, Gallon Neck Night. Hot stove talk, Robin C, bringing the high. EC's alive, plus trust under those in my city life. White. Queens got the dreams united. On the rag, Trump out, bring me stack. Night and under that chocolate flag. Smack a home out the park, rock the deafening in black. Side game time, Robin CP time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remains cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever. I'm 50 in sight, match bright and high. Energy like a live wire. Queen City chance, passion never tires. Grand slam dreams and paces floating fast. Holding it steady, cause we know we gonna last. We the kings of the field, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remain cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever, I'm 50 in sight. All hearts ignite like NYC stars. Robin CP, guiding even through scars. Queens got the glow, city anthem flows.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to episode 32 of the Mets Hot Stove this offseason as we head into the month of February very, very soon. Right before we came on, breaking news, not for the New York Mets, but kind of related. Max Scherzer signs with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think it was for 1 year, $15 million I just saw. So it was similar to what Verlander got, which is, makes sense considering the fact that they're both over 40 or 40 and over, and that's the number that 40-year-olds are getting apparently. I'm happy because I don't want Scherzer on this team. I think he, had a lot to say on his way out after he got traded. And he's a Toronto Blue Jay now, so he can live in Canada for the next year and probably not make the playoffs, considering the fact that they always never live up to their hype. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I'm super happy the Mets didn't go down that route of Scherzer, and we were having those discussions. Ultimately, Pat Ragazzo in his reports was correct. I mean, he came on and told us that they're targeting, two of Scherzer, Alonso, and Bregman. I just saw him tweet out, just 5 to 10 minutes ago that Scherzer and Alonso are really good friends. And I don't know if that has any correlation or connection, but we're going to be talking about it because we do have a lot of Pete Alonso, I guess, news topics, to be honest with you. I mean, this is a never-ending saga with Pete Alonso. So I will say for the chat, appreciate you all being here, whether you're in my live stream or Rob's live stream. Smash those thumbs up buttons. And if at any point during this stream, my mic's been acting up a little bit, if you can't hear me, just let me know in the chat and I'll try to fumble around some settings here. So I don't know what's going on, but I'll get to the bottom of it.
Well, nothing's ever a stream on the Mets Hot Stove if something doesn't go wrong. That's the way it usually goes. If it's not a pregame or a postgame, it's definitely a hot stove for sure. So, yeah, look, Scherzer's a Blue Jay, and they are very good friends. Maybe that correlates. We know that the Blue Jays have had an offer for Pete Alonso for at least a week now, week and a half. So if the rumors are true with Pete Alonso, and we'll get into that a little bit more, we'll see if it's a correlation between the two, but we'll definitely get into that. But the Mets did make another signing yesterday and to bolster their bullpen even more. And I think this kind of came out of nowhere, Chris, because, we had Pat Ragazzo on the night before, and, he didn't really hear anything. He wasn't sure if they were going to be going after Stanek just because of the fact that, they did get AJ Minter, were they going to go after a Tim Hill that's probably going to be, for, another lefty in there, they're a little less money, or they might have just went an internal route when it went towards another bullpen arm. Sean Refoley was a factor as well, but they did sign Stanek. And then, if you want to believe Andy Martino, who's been kind of wrong lately, which is, not something that, we're shocked about, but he said that the Stanek move, because it was, a decent, little bit of money for 1 year, $4.5 million, that it correlates with, or at least it kind of links the situation that's going on with Pete Alonso of, I know you wanted Stanek back, or at least a similar type of pitcher than Stanek, but we did get Stanek back, and this bullpen is coming into form. I think they're going to get one more guy, but it seems like they're still in on Tim Hill. What are your thoughts on the Stanek signing?
I'm gonna go against that and say that I think they're done with the bullpen, to be honest with you. I think what Andy Martino was saying in the article is that because they signed Ryan Stanek, that they were talking to other higher name relievers like Tim Hill, like a Kenley Jansen, which really shocked me. That would have been a great addition, but definitely for like 10 plus more $1 million. David Robertson, same thing. Now, because they got Ryan Stanek, who we all knew was going to be the cheaper option of all these names, even though we wanted him back, we just knew with the numbers that he posted in 2024, and just given the age as well, is that he was going to be the cheaper option, whether it was 4 million, 5 million, or 6 million. He settled right there in the middle for 4.5 million. And it's a great deal. It's a steal for the Mets because the bullpen is really coming into shape, like you said. And I think what Andy Martino was trying to say, in that article was that because they saved $10 million by going the Stanek route instead of a higher named and higher tier reliever, that they're going to have more money to allocate in their minds for Pete Alonso. Now, I'm not really sure I buy into that, to be honest with you, because we're talking about the $301 million mark, which the Mets are just under. Any signing that they make from here on out, presumably, is going to go ahead and put them over that threshold. I think it's $3.5 million. So again, if they sign maybe some infield depth, maybe they can stay under that. But again, if they get Pete Alonso, and we're sort of still speculating whether he's going to be on this team, they're going to blow right past it. So I'm not really sure if that has any correlation to do with each other. You also have the notion of, do the Mets want to stay as close as possible, even if they go over to that $301 million, or are they just going to blow right by it, like they have tended to do in the past, in particular last offseason? I don't have the answer to that. But you know what I will say is that AJ Minter is the sole lefty in this bullpen. Adding Tim Hill would be fantastic, and I would be on board with it if they are willing to go that extra mile and go 110% in doing that. I just think that the next lefty in this pen is just going to be internal competition between Genesis Cabrera, newly acquired Met this offseason, and also Danny Young, and see who battles it out and wins that battle in spring training. I know that's what Mets fans don't want to hear. I just am very skeptical about them adding another reliever at this point after the Stanek signing.
Yeah, it would be very interesting if they do go out and get Tim Hill as well. Then they're really trying to bolster the bullpen, and we kind of wonder in the next topic, or like next couple of topics with Cease and King on the Mets that serious and adding a big time starter to this rotation, including Jack Flaherty. I'd even put it as a topic. Only because I think we can link it in with the Cease and King possible trade scenario. But yeah, I like the Stanek move. Look, am I going to complain? Absolutely not. They saved, $6, $7, $8 million on anybody else they could have brought in here, minus a Tim Hill. Even Tim Hill might even cost like $7, $8 million. So, look, if they do get another reliever, they're clearly going to blow over. Like, it doesn't matter what they do. They still need another bat. Even if they trade for a Torkelson, they trade for a Mountcastle, that's going to put them, even Torkelson, even though he's cheap still, I think if he's making like because I think he's in that second arbitration area. I think he's making like $4 or $5 million. So they're going to go right over that luxury tax. And depending on how much they want to go over, obviously, if Cohen is clearly talking to Alonso again, you just assume that, he doesn't mind going over. But Stanek's a good signing. Tim Hill would be an excellent addition. If you do that, I mean, you got two lefties in a bullpen, and strong lefties in a bullpen. You got Stanek back, and with the possibility of still having the depth of Young and Cabrera in the minors, just in case of anything, is a tremendous amount of depth for a bullpen that had no depth last year. And once all these guys got hurt, you relied heavily on the two young kids in Buto and Nunez, and now you have those guys come. Hopefully should be ready to go and healthy, along with the bigger names that you just brought in, and with Stanek and Minter. And you're not even talking about, hey, we still have Edwin Diaz as our closer. That seems like some people are forgetting. And Diaz said something the other day on X that in Spanish, in the like of come let's go, I'm ready, like let's get it. So Diaz is feeling very confident about his knee, and we talked about this, Chris, in regards to the bullpen, especially with Diaz. When you have an injury like that, it takes like a year to have your mind get over the fact, you're not thinking about it 24/7. One misstep you're blowing out your knee, and that takes time. I had an injury. I know I'm not a professional baseball player, but when you play sports and you hurt yourself, it's in the back of your mind. One wrong step here or there, you can tweak it again, you can hurt it again, you can blow out your knee, blow out something else. And I think with Diaz having a full year under his belt, I don't think he worries about the knee anymore. You know what he's worrying about? That nasty slider, that spot in that fastball. And I think that's what he's going to be doing. I think Diaz is going to shock a lot of people this year, going to be extremely well, like 2022 type of Edwin Diaz. So I think that's where we are when it comes to the bullpen right now. But if the bullpen is what it is, it's a damn good bullpen.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Tim Hill, I would definitely advocate for Tim Hill even still, because you have a little bit of a different look at that point than AJ Minter. Hill is kind of a side armor at this point, and he throws 89, 90 miles per hour. And AJ Minter's complete opposite. I mean, he's more dominant with the fastball, 94, 95, 96. So it's a good separation of a look from Tim Hill to AJ Minter, and that would be awesome. But again, I just can't see it with everything that we've been hearing and seeing with the reports. At this point, we know that the Yankees are pretty much after Tim Hill as well in a reunion there. He was very clutch for them on the stretch of the season. He had a great time in a Yankees uniform, an abysmal time in a White Sox uniform, and he was really crucial, key for that bullpen in their playoff run to the World Series. So it'd be a great signing. Again, I just don't see it, but I think that with this bullpen as is right now, it's still great. I mean, to be honest with you, like you just said, and there's some question marks on how this could all play out because there's so many names, such little spots to give out. I was looking at Fangraphs yesterday and kind of looking at their projections and where they're projecting each guy to be at to start the season. But to my surprise, Daniel Nunez, they had him starting off in AAA. They had him starting off in the minor leagues because he had some options or whatever, and some guys don't have options. You have Sean Reed-Foley, Max Kranick, Huáscar Brazaban, Tyler Zuber. I mean, Tyler McGill that you can throw in there as well. All these guys, Genesis Cabrera, Danny Young, all these guys are going to be competing for one of those last two spots in the bullpen because you've got 6 names already in this bullpen that you're probably going to be rolling with, right? I also find it very hard to believe that Daniel Nunez is going to start in the minor leagues, but you never know, especially with the injury. Maybe they want to ramp him up a little bit. But this is a good problem to have because then you have depth at that point in the minor leagues, and then you're able to go through a full season. And if there should be any injuries, right, as we know the Mets habitually deal with over the course of 162 games, you have that depth to go ahead and fill in. Hopefully it's only for like an IL 15 stint for these guys instead of like an IL 60. But yeah, I like the current standing of this bullpen a lot, even if there's no additional moves.
Yeah, exactly. Like the only way I see Nunez in the minors is if they want to make sure he's 100% healthy and try to ramp him back up and not try to rush him right away. But again, you're not looking for Nunez to pitch the 8th inning anymore as much as we did. We needed him last year. So, I mean, we're going to need him a lot this year. But yeah, I mean, if you give him 2 or 3 weeks in the minors just to ramp him back up and make sure he's good to go, then, you still got Genesis Cabrera, you still got a multitude of guys, even Griffin Cannon, that some think that he might actually make a bullpen spot as well. And again, if you're going to go with a 6-man rotation, how many bullpen arms can you actually have? I think what do you have, 13 or 14? The max of pitchers on your roster. So, there's not a lot of room, like you said, Chris. So we will definitely see. But again, when it comes to Stanek, and reports say that it can relate if you really think about it, which I don't agree with. I think Alonso's Alonso and Stanek is Stanek. But a few days ago, news came out, and we both did videos about it the other day, that Cohen has re-engaged talks with Pete Alonso's camp. And, that kind of shocked a lot of people because, listen, Paragazzo came up, and we believe him, right? He's been on point almost all offseason, this year. And, look, these reporters are not perfect. It's hard to do when you're trying to find sources and everything like that. But when it comes to Pete Alonso, he didn't think that it didn't feel like it was possible. It seemed like, it was kind of on that negative spin when it comes to Pete Alonso. But Cohen and Alonso's camp are talking again. We know that Blue Jays offer is out there. We still don't know what it is, but it's apparently out there. I think because Cohen re-engaged and because I think Cohen, when he spoke on Saturday at the Amazing Day, he believed that Pete Alonso was probably going to take that Blue Jays offer. I think that was the tone of the room and the way he sounded. It seemed like he ultimately thought Pete Alonso was gone, and he probably thought on Monday that Pete Alonso was probably going to sign with the Blue Jays. And I think when he didn't see that happen, and he's probably hearing, whispers around the league, and probably David Stearns as well, that Pete Alonso is not signing yet because of the hopes of still signing with the New York Mets. I think that's when Cohen probably jumped in and goes, all right, let's see if we can get this done, Chris. And, am I confident at this point now? I don't even know what I feel anymore. I just feel like, it's pitches and catches in less than 2 weeks. If Pete Alonso is going to be here, get him here over the next 2 or 3 days and get it done by the end of the week, so we can, worry about talking about the roster as a whole, because the roster is basically done at that point if you're going to get Pete Alonso, Chris.
Yeah, it's just been a seesaw battle for me whether I believe Pete Alonso is coming back to the New York Mets or not, right? After Steve Cohen's comments, I kind of lost a little bit of faith. Then we heard about the whole Blue Jays, smoke from multiple different people on Mets social medias, right? And Andy Martino went as far as to say that it's on the 10-yard line in their negotiations. But what I will say is that I am back on the bandwagon of Pete Alonso coming back to the New York Mets. I've been trying to hold out hope that Pete Alonso would stay in New York Met for a reasonable price this entire offseason. And the fact that Steve Cohen said what he said and then was back to the negotiating table in less than 48 hours after that is good news. What's also good news is that if the Blue Jays have an offer, which there is a reported offer, like you just said, out there for Pete Alonso, the fact that it was so close, right? Or however you want to put it, between the two parties last week. And then Alonso all of a sudden is like, nah, I don't want to do it. He doesn't want to go to Toronto, man.
No,
He doesn't
I don't
want to go
think
to
so.
Toronto. He doesn't want to go to
Do
Toronto.
you think Scherzer kind of puts him a little bit more, I guess, a little happier about going to Toronto, that he has a friend there? Or if, like, I still don't believe if the deal is close and the Mets and Alonso kind of come in the middle a little bit with their demands, that he's going to take similar dollars and maybe even similar years to go to Toronto just because of Max Scherzer, who, might be on the team, but he's not the player that he was 3, 4, 5 years ago. So
it's only a 1-year deal, by the way, for Scherzer, so he's not going to be there long term.
If you're thinking about the opt out, it's kind of a 1-year deal for Pete Alonso, most likely as well. So, but again, Pete Alonso's in a tough spot, in my opinion, right? If you go with the Mets, you clearly got Juan Soto and Vientos and Nimmo all around you when you got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You got an older Springer. It's not a better lineup. Like, let's be clear about that. Like, there's not much there. And, with the expectation and the possibility of them not doing much more. They actually will have Santander. But again, what lineup would you rather be in right now if you're Pete Alonso? The one with Juan Soto, Vientos, Nimmo, and Lindor? Or, Guerrero and Santander? Now, you put them three together, it sounds good, right? It does sound good. But is it good enough to beat the Yankees in the weak American League? Is Pete Alonso even worrying about that? I don't know. I think he can have a better season with the Mets because he ain't the main focus anymore. But again, I still believe that if the deal is close from either offer, and clearly the Mets and Alonso's talking, so I'm assuming they're getting somewhat closer, because why re-engage if nothing is flexible at all? Because Steve Cohen said he's flexible. We don't know if Pete Alonso is flexible. I'm thinking Pete Alonso is flexible, and I think he needs to be, because I don't think the Blue Jays have a 3-year deal on the table. I think it's a 2-year deal with the first year opt-out, in my opinion. Because if it was a 3-year deal and it was that negative and sour with the Mets situation, he would have been a Blue Jay already. I just feel it. And if it was much better than the Mets offer, then he would have been gone already. So I just think it's too close, the offers, to where he's not willing to go to Toronto for similar money when he could just stay where he knows, and that's with the New York Mets.
I think that Scherzer signing there could definitely sway him just a little
Yeah,
bit. And I do think that that would depend on the New York Mets and how, if they're willing to at least go halfway between what they're offering and what he declined and what that gap still is. It all depends on the New York Mets. I believe Pat Ragazzo stated when he was on with us answering questions that the Blue Jays in order would prefer to get Scherzer in the door first to use that as a little bit of a sales pitch to Pete Alonso if there were any doubts. So I have no doubt in my mind if that's the case. I mean, step one is already complete for the Blue Jays, right?
yeah,
And step two is going back to Pete Alonso and just saying, hey, we just got your buddy. We just got Santander. We still have Vladdy. Let's run this thing in Canada. But at the end of the day, I really do think it's about the Mets and how adamant, how serious they're going to be in budging on their offer. And if
yeah,
they don't budge at all, if there's no room for negotiation from the Mets side and they are standing still 100%, then Pete will be a Blue Jay. But if they're willing, like if there's any wiggle room at all, like you just said, then I think he's going to be a Met because there's no doubt in my mind. We've been saying it for as long as this situation has been presenting itself this offseason that the best opportunity for him to go back out onto the market and get a long-term deal after having a successful season, being surrounded by the best lineup possible, right? Both driving runners in and guys that are getting on before him and also behind him, having some protection at the very minimum. I'm not saying that he needs protection at this point, but it would help him, right? In terms of
yeah.
getting more pitches, you would think, that would come with the New York Mets. I'm still very adamant about that. But at the very minimum, with what the Blue Jays are doing, I got to give respect to them. They're finding ways to make things happen with the lack of a market that players have when they think about Toronto, right? They were able to swing a trade for Andres Jimenez. They already have George Springer. They're being very stubborn in the Vlad Jr. trade or lack thereof because they are adamant, and so is Pat Ragazzo when he came on with us saying that they're not going to trade him this offseason. It makes no sense for them to do so given their front office instability and their jobs are on the line. And they also now have Santander, which they needed to tack on that extra fifth year to get into the door. So I think the Blue Jays are cooking something up. I just don't think that it's good enough, to be honest with you, to be true contenders and competition for some of those AL teams. Although it's a weaker league objectively than the National League, I don't know, man. I have a hard time believing if Pete Alonso originally was wary about taking that original deal with the Blue Jays after the Mets were being stubborn. I mean, I have to imagine it's going to take more than Max Scherzer. I would hope it takes more than Max Scherzer to be completely convinced. We'll see.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And again, I don't think Cohen would re-engage with Pete Alonso if he wasn't a little flexible on whatever demands that Pete Alonso might have had in that offer, because we don't know the offer. We still don't know. Like, we heard a couple of things that, it was an opt-out. It had no deferred money. It also had a buyout clause where if he opted out, the Mets would have to pay him. I think Cohen's flexible somewhere. I don't think a lot, but I think enough where clearly they are talking again. And I think it does make sense for both sides. And again, you hit the nail right on the head. You said if it was so bad, this negotiations, and it seems sour and just rotten at this point, and he still hasn't signed with Pete Alonso. If Max Scherzer is the difference, then again, Pete Alonso never want to be a Met, so I never want to hear that again from any other fan. Even if he becomes a Met, I still feel like he had no doubt that he would be willing to go somewhere else if he felt like it was a better option with contract wise. But I feel like the Mets are going to get it done because I think it's going to take one more speed bump. If there's one more speed bump, Pete Alonso's gone. And I think Cohen actually knows that as well. And listen, if this is Cohen's last ditch effort to figure out, a median, in somewhere in the middle with both sides, I didn't get it done because it helps both sides more than them splitting apart, in my opinion.
How have we not talked about this, and how have we been talking about this without addressing what the Blue Jays just did recently? They offered Alex Bregman a 6-year deal. They have a deal out for Alex Bregman as well. And that's very important information to sort of go off of and assess when we're talking about their trial or their effort to get Pete Alonso. I mean, they're desperate. They're like, Pete, come on over. We'll give you what you want. Bregman, if you want 6 years, we're not going to question it. We'll match what the Houston Astros give you. We just want you in the doors. Come to Toronto, please. Right. And that's certainly a strategy for them. Right. I mean, they have to do it at the end of the day if these guys are wary about going to Toronto. I just think it's pretty funny. But again, all credit to Pat Ragazzo. Make sure you all check him out. He was very gracious with his time to come on with us for about 30 minutes to answer some questions. He even tweeted this out. They want 2 of Scherzer, Bregman, and Alonso from here on out into the rest of the offseason when it's finished into spring training. They've already got 1 of the 3. They need 1 more. So they have an offer out to both of these guys, both Alonso and Bregman at this point. One's going to be for a short-term deal because there's no sense in giving Alonso, 5 or 6 years. Maybe for all we know, they tacked on a 4th year for Pete Alonso for insurance. We don't know. If they followed their model in what they did for Santander, wouldn't you think that they would do so for Pete Alonso and just add on another option year and more safety and protection for a 4th year? But do you also think, I got to think that if Pete Alonso gets wind of that and he's like, well, are they really serious about me, or are they just kind of, toying around here and as an act of desperation? And now they're going out and offering Alex Bregman. Does that sit well with him? So I don't know. It's a whole revolving door. The Toronto Blue Jays, again, it's very hard to compete against a desperate team. I've been saying this all along, and they seem really desperate.
Yeah, and you're spot on, right? Same thing goes for Bregman. Like, hey, you have a deal with Pete Alonso, or with Pete Alonso and myself. Who do you? I don't think you care who you want. It's either one at this point. And the interesting thing is, who's the agent for all 3 of these guys, and the 2 out of the 3 that they want? Scott Boras. So these players know exactly what the deals are on the table for. So they might not be happy with the fact that, you have an offer for him too. Just in case I go here, you're going to try to get that guy. So it's like, you don't really want me, as the number 1 choice. It's just like, all right, you're a backup plan if the other guy doesn't go with me. So look, I hope this ends soon. I really don't want to go into spring training and it's still not done. But here's the thing that I like. That when the Mets, quote unquote, pivoted, they got the guys they wanted when they pivoted, right? They went to get a couple of bullpen arms, right? They went Jesse Winker. I think it was right before they pivoted, they got Sean Manaea. So they pivoted. They did what they had to do to bolster their team and to make themselves as better. Yet they were still willing this whole time to get back to the table with Pete Alonso, and I like that a lot, because if you can get Pete Alonso, they not only took care of Plan B and pivot to Plan B, they also still ended up with their Plan A, which was Soto Alonso offseason, Chris, and that is great if they do that. Now, are they going to go after Torkelson and Mountcastle if Pete Alonso isn't a New York Met? I think they will. I don't think they really want to move Vientos to first base, even though they feel like they could do that. I don't think they want to, because you don't want to move a guy who had a great season last year and now he has to worry about his defense along with hitting as well. I don't think they want to mess with that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. I've been on record. It's kind of hard for me to say that I wouldn't move Vientos over, because I personally would. I don't think that you lose anything in that regard. He posted a -6 DRS last year. He was a good fielder on, to the naked eye, but on paper, he was kind of like average at best, maybe a little bit below average at third base. At least that's what the numbers say. But I mean, if you're Mark Vientos, you probably want to stay at third base as well. I mean, if you take a look at the market too, I'm not saying that he's due for an extension anytime soon, but it's like establishing your career as a third baseman is probably more advantageous at this point than, establishing your career at first base. And so that's probably the way that Mark Vientos is looking at it too, even though he has a ways out in terms of an extension or whatever when he hits free agency. But that's also something to consider. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard to talk about backup options when we don't know what's going to happen with Pete. I don't know. I actually don't think that David Stearns would hesitate to move Mark Vientos over to first base if it came down to it. Do they want to do that? No, because Pete Alonso's on the market, right? And he's such a premier bat. But let's just say Pete Alonso signed already, right? And he signed with a different team. and you were debating between Torkelson at first base or just moving Vientos over and trying to plug in another third baseman, I don't think that he would hesitate to just put Vientos over at first base. I don't know. That's just the sense that I get, but it would be much more, I guess, preferable. I wouldn't hesitate to do that, and I don't think David Stearns would, but it'd be preferable if Vientos stayed at third. That's like if you have the option on the table, that's what you do. So we'll see. That hypothetical is very hard to assess until we get the full scope of what's going on with Pete Alonso.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you know what? What's also interesting is that, we thought the whole situation with Pete Alonso is leading towards maybe talking some Mountcastle, but, we thought the Mets would be done with the rotation. And, Pat Regazzo, he tweeted it out the other day prior to him coming on with us that, the Mets could be in on Flaherty and Pivetta. And then recently, all of a sudden the Mets have checked in or has been talking to the Padres in regards to Cease and King. And I'm still not confident David Stearns is willing to give up the prospects needed to do so. Not only are these guys not under contract after this year, there's no control. So is he willing to give up prospects? Now, you heard when it comes to King that it could be a 10 to 15 type of prospect, along with maybe another prospect as well. But I don't see it happening. I don't do it. Both of these guys are 30 years old, or Cease is a little bit younger, but he's going to be 30 once he becomes a free agent, and King's going to be 31 when he's a free agent next year. I just don't see it happening for a rental. Like, I'd love for them to do either one, and I'd be happy with either one. It makes me feel a hell of a lot more confident in this rotation going into the 2025 season. I just don't see it happening, to be quite honest with you. I think they can get better offers elsewhere. I think there'll be more teams. I don't think David Stearns is desperate. I don't think he feels desperate. I think he should be desperate, but I don't think he feels that way, unlike other teams that might be desperate for a Cease, for a King. And I would think Cease will probably cost a little bit more. The only way I see David Stearns pulling the trigger on a prospect or two for King is because King has 400 less innings than Dylan Cease at a similar age. That's the only thing I could think of. And somebody in the comments said about an extension if you trade for them. They're not doing an extension. They're just not. They're this close to free agency. If they have a great year, they're looking at $150+ million for 5-6 years in a contract. The Mets, look at their track record with David Stearns. They're not giving anything more than a 3-year deal to anybody over 30 or older. They're just not doing that. So this guy will be a rental, Cease or King, if he becomes a New York Met. And I think King could be a possibility. The Mets could bring him back if they get him because of the least amount of innings compared to Cease, 400 less innings than Cease. But I just don't see it happening, Chris. And I don't believe they're going to go after Jack Flaherty either. I think it's going to be either Pivetta or nobody else, to be quite honest with you. But what is your take on the Cease and King situation? Do you think the Mets are serious in one of those guys? Or
I'd be shocked if it happens, man. I'd be really shocked if it happens. I'll say that. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I will really be shocked if it happens, given David Stearns' not track record, but just the patterns that he showed us so far and has shown us so far. There's been reports that the Padres are aiming sky high right off the bat, and they're in talks with the Cubs as well. We know the Braves are interested in both of these arms, which would be, I don't even want to think about the Braves landing one of those guys.
That's why the Mets need to do it. At least one of them.
That would be tragic. The Padres are looking for, at least this will give you a good idea of what it could take and how high they're aiming for right now. There's reports that they asked for the Cubs' #1 overall prospect in a trade for Dylan Cease. So, I mean, I don't know. That's not a good sign. And I think what you're alluding to with the top 15 and the top 10 plus an MLB-ready player, that's what Zach Scott said on SNY. And he put up, and I talked about it in one of my videos. I dropped it today at 3:30. I have it in my description of this live stream right now. If you want to go check that out after you're done listening to this, be my guest. I talked about that proposal that Zach Scott, proposed, and I'm sitting there looking at it. He said Buto, Drew Gilbert, and Jonah Tong. And I'm like, really? For Michael King,
That's
1
crazy.
year? I mean, that's 2 top 10 prospects in an MLB, a young, because Jose Buto is still relatively young, right? For 1 year of Michael King. And I'm like, I can make an argument for both sides, Rob. I really can. I can make an argument for why the Mets should do it, and I can also make an argument for why they shouldn't do it. Because at the end of the day, we all overvalue the Mets prospects. We have to be honest with ourselves with where this farm system is at. Okay? We do, because it's not a top 10 farm system. It's really not. So if you wanted to get to that level and be a top 10 farm system while also simultaneously knowing that the Mets are 3 years in a row and probably will be 4 years next year in a row losing out on their actual draft position, right? And they will be picking in like 19-20 range instead of top 10 or whatever, because that's already happened multiple times over the past 2 seasons. That's like a really hard way to build your farm system if that's continuously happening with where your payroll's at. So if you want to get to that Dodgers-esque farm system where they can wheel and deal for these, these big time names and not worry about what they're losing from the farm system, trading for these rentals is not the way to do it. Now, on the other side, I understand that people do not care about that. They want now and they want 2025 because we're Mets fans. We're impatient. We're contending because Juan Soto's here. Lindor's 30 plus years old. Jeff McNeil's whatever. Brandon Nimmo's 30 plus years old as well. We want to win now. And the way to do that is by getting a frontline starter. So you could really look at it from both sides of the coin. And that's the perspective that I'm trying to give to you all as viewers. Like, which route realistically, both looking at the long term and the short term, would you go down? And I agree with you with David Stearns. Like, it would be far-fetched to think that he would go and extend either of these guys, definitely not before the season, but even after, if they're commanding a 5 or 6 year deal, being 30 years old, 31, when they're hitting the open market. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, someone fact check me on this, is Dylan Cease's agent is Scott Boras, isn't it?
Probably.
I think he's the agent of Dylan Cease. So if you want to do that, and if you want to have like a Pete Alonso 2.0 situation from the standpoint of Dylan Cease, who has really no ties to the Mets at this point. They brought him in for a single season, right? There's no sentimental value there. If he hits the open market, has a great season, and the Mets are forced to extend him or let him go, it's a hard sell at that point. So Darren asked me in the chat earlier if I would do Zach Scott's proposal. I said no. And it's hard for me to say no while also trying to focus on 2025. But I really do think that would be an overpay, and the risk that you run, because the same fans that say that they would do it would also be the same ones complaining that we traded for a rental when it's all said and done, if that's how it plays out. So you have to acknowledge the risks. And it really is a situation of where you view this farm system, where David Stearns views this farm system, and how serious he is about getting it to a top 10 level, or just starting basically from scratch if you let go of 2 top 10s, because that's a massive hit with a pretty front-loaded farm system at this point, is what I can call the Mets, right?
Yep.
It's a front-loaded farm system. So I don't know. It's a really hard thing to assess. These guys are studs. They'd be 1A options at the front of this Mets rotation objectively, but losing out on them if they have a tremendous season, and losing the prospects as well would just be a bad look. And that's what's in the back of my head, unfortunately.
Well, this is why I'm frustrated with David Stearns. He doesn't want to give money to starting pitchers that are 30 or older, which every free agent is almost 98% of free agents starting pitchers that are any good, that could be a top 1 or top 2 starter, are going to be a 30 or older. And if you're never going to give a 5-6 year deal to these guys, which I don't see why you wouldn't do that, because it's rare that a pitcher that's 36 years old is going to break down like Scherzer did when we got him at 38, 39, and Verlander, who was 40. That's a whole different story. I don't like that philosophy. Like, if you're not going to use your prospects to get a better pitcher in here, and you're not going to spend a 5-6 year deal on a Fried, or, I know it's 8 years, but, like a Fried or a Burns, then who are you really going to get? You're not going to get anybody. You're going to get the Pavettas of the world. You're going to get the Shomanayas of the world, who clearly wanted to be back here. So you probably got someone of a discount. And like, what are we doing here? You're getting a Frankie Montage. You're getting too many reclamation projects. This is the problem that I have. We got 27 shortstops in this farm system. I still don't believe that moving these guys to center field, to third base, to left field, or wherever you want to do is the right option here. These guys are more valued as a shortstop than anywhere else. All you're doing is lowering their value if you're going to use these guys in other positions. And if they don't turn out well in those positions, it's hurting their value. And I just don't understand it. You got too many shortstops. You got guys.
But you don't have enough pitching prospects, which if that proposal is
I
true,
agree with you.
Jonah Tong, you can't move them at that point.
But here's the other thing, right? What are they? They are prospects, right? I'm not talking about trading Brandon Sproat, right? Jonah Tong, he had one good season last year in the farm system, and now, you know, including yourself, including me, we're looking at him like he's gonna be, you know, a number 3 in this rotation. We have no idea. He can have a terrible season in the farm system, and guess where his value is gonna go? It's gonna get right down in the gutter, and it's gonna tank. And then the Mets lost out on an opportunity on getting somebody, because if they did want a Gilbert, and listen, I'm not trading Jose Butto. Jose Butto.
So that's where you draw the line, is Jose Butto instead of like the actual prospects?
Because I'd rather give a Gilbert and a Tong than adding Butto in there, because Butto's going to help this team now, right? Your bullpen or your rotation, whatever you want to do with Butto, is going to take a loss big time, because Butto is going to be a big part of this bullpen, in my opinion. Look, I don't know what Gilbert's going to be. I like Gilbert, but again, we don't know what he's going to be. He's coming off an injury last year. He has played in the Arizona Fall League, looked pretty good, and we'll see what he does in the farm system. But again, I'm not crying the river for Jonah Tong, right? We still have Tidwell, we still have Hamill, we still have Brandon Sproat. If you got 3 out of your top 10, top 12, 13 prospects, and you lose one of them, you know, out of the 4 guys, it's not the end of the world. Like, and that's the thing, like, I think we're giving up on this year. I truly don't think I don't think David Stearns is trying to go all in here for this year, which I understand the logic in this, but you better be right on these prospects that you're thinking of, because you can't give me the bullshit on Amazing Day saying that, oh, we're very excited about our internal options, and then Steve Cohen the next day is calling up Pete Alonso. So your owner doesn't believe it then. Like, it just does not make sense. There's a little bit of fraction between Stearns and Cohen, because once again, Cohen is going over Stearns' head. So does Cohen really believe in the internal options, or is this David Stearns believing in the options? And now there's a right between the owner and the president of baseball ops. Not saying that they're screaming at each other or anything like that, but I think Cohen has a different philosophy than David Stearns. And maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, to have a little bit of a disagreement. But when your president of baseball ops clearly said, we are excited about our internal options and we believe in our internal options, and then Steve Cohen the next day, 24 to 48 hours later, is renegotiating with Pete Alonso. So your owner doesn't believe what you're saying. So I just don't get it. And that's what I don't understand. Like, you're not willing to give up the prospects. You're not willing to spend the money on a need of this team. If anybody tells me that the starting pitching doesn't need another starting pitcher, that it's at least a top 3 starter, top 2 starter, you're out of your goddamn mind, because everybody will be the first one to complain at the trade deadline that the Mets are going to need a starting pitcher. I guarantee you they're going to need a starting pitcher at the deadline. Why not do it now when it's available, when you have the prospects to do it, right? I know we're a top-loaded farm system, but we were worse 2 years ago. We're a lot better now than we were 2 years ago. We are. It's just the way it is. In 2022, Brett Beatty looked like he was a failure, right? What was there, right? We didn't have Gilbert yet. We didn't have Clifford yet, right? Brandon Sproat wasn't in the top 10 yet. He jumped up. A couple of guys did jump up. Obviously, with the trades, we got a couple of good prospects here. But again, I just don't see what we're doing here. Either, you know, what do they call the Padres for? Hey, we're going to give you, Jeremy Rodriguez and Marco Vargas. That's what you're calling up the Padres. They probably laughed when they were hanging up the phone. Like,
those are shortstops, though, that you said is overcrowding the Mets farm system, though, Rob. So what's the problem?
But David Stearns don't want to do that. That's the problem. I think David Stearns calls up and says, I'll give you Jeremy Rodriguez and Marco Vargas. That's what he's probably talking about. Like, he's embarrassing himself if he's not. You're going to call the Padres when you clearly know they're looking for a certain type of player or a certain type of prospects, and you're going to give a bunch of nonsense offers, which, what is it, just to save face that you tried? Because this is what he's done.
I will say, first of all, nobody knows what was stated. Like, we can't assume that David Stearns is BSing the Padres right now. We have no idea what he's offering the Padres. You don't know Rob, you objectively do not know what he's telling the Padres right now.
No, because he has not done anything in a year and a half. He's been the president of baseball ops to tell me that he's willing to do it, right? If you want the player, go get him. If you want Dylan Cease, go get him. You want King, go get him. If you want Vladimir Guerrero Jr., go get him. Get anybody you want. There's needs of this team, and he hasn't done it at all. Everything, every player besides Juan Soto, they got deals. So I'm not saying Stearns is the mastermind in getting Shomania back here. Like, that was hard to do, right? AJ Minter, who was coming off a hip injury, it was either him or Scott. He wasn't going to pay for Scott. Everybody he got a deal on. Like, every player, he could have got a better player from somebody else. Couldn't do it. Didn't want to do it, probably. I just feel like until he actually makes a trade that actually is dealing with prospects, I'm not going to believe it. You don't even believe they're going to do it for Cease and King. Like,
I don't, but I'm okay with that. That the difference between me and you is that I'm okay with that, because I understand.
You're okay with that, but you're also talking about trying to get another starting pitcher in here. Like, you can't have
of course.
But that's course. If they get Nick Pivetta, you're going to be satisfied?
Yes, I've been on record saying that. Yes.
No way. Absolutely not.
I've been on record saying that. Listen, Rob,
4 ERA guy just doesn't make sense to me.
Listen, all I'm saying to you is that we cannot complain about the Mets' lack of pitching in the farm system coming up. You know how the Braves got to this nice core that they had before with Fried, Strider, Schwellenbach, etc., is because they developed those guys. The Mets could have the luxury of doing that, but looking at the shiny object over there in San Diego and being like, we're going to go ahead and just like deplete the farm system, especially from the pitching side. If they make a deal for Cease or King, I'm okay if they use prospects that are position players. Like you said, there's a lot of positional players, not enough room. But consistently, trying to include the top pitching prospects in this farm system is a little bit of a hard stop for me, because I'm like, there's no way we're going to get to a point where we can emulate the Dodgers, where we can emulate the Braves. And I'm looking forward to that. And I understand that we're trying to be objective here in the present, but excuse me, something's in my eye. But yeah, listen, I don't know, man. I hear you and I hear the concern, but all I'm saying is that there's not much pitching depth in this farm system to begin with. And we can make excuses for why we shouldn't trade for every single player or sign every single player. I understand that. But when you have a situation where this farm system is still, we're better off completely than 2 years ago, but it's still not really good, and you're telling me that you're going to give up, 2 top 10s for a rental, and then plus Buto, who you're saying you don't want to do, who you don't want to give up, and doing that deal, I don't know, man. I have to take the opposite stance of you, to be honest with you. I do.
But the fact of the matter is, there's a need here, and again, you said you're going to be okay with Nick Pivetta. Again, it's another 4 ERA guy that they're praying is going to be better. It's just a silly concept.
You said you would have been okay with Scherzer when we were talking about Scherzer, because he's a nice back end of the rotation.
When I thought they weren't going to go get a Jack Flaherty or a Cease was available or King.
So you believe it's going to happen now? So you believe they're going to go get those top line guys?
God knows.
Because earlier you said you didn't believe that.
No, I don't think they are. But
okay.
But when they had the conversation, again, we're believing Pat Ragazzo here in regards to Jack Flaherty and Pivetta, which I think Pivetta is just another link in the nonsense that we're trying to put a rotation together here with nobody that believes that this rotation is any good. Can it be? Sure, absolutely. It's a lot of wish, hopes, and dreams with this rotation. And again, if they're serious about Jack Flaherty, go get him. What's the problem? If it's going to be a short-term deal, go get him. Like, I would be fine with Jack Flaherty. He's clearly a number 3, possibly could be a number 2. That's doing something with the rotation. Pavetta is just another, a silly link in this rotation that could be solid, but who the hell knows? You need 2 or 3 guys here to have really good seasons, to have a decent rotation along with the offense. I just feel like it just doesn't make sense the way they're going, because the way they're doing this rotation, we're going to be talking about this again next year. Right? Who's a 2 or 3 year deal, right? Kodai Senga has an opt out. If he has a good season, wouldn't he opt out? Right? Wouldn't he opt out? I would think so. And are the Mets going to give him? He's over 30. He's 30 years old now. Are you not going to sign Kodai Senga now too? It's just a silly concept, right? You're going to have David Peterson and Sean Manaea. Now you got to hope Sproat has a good season and Tidwell has a good season. Sproat, you hope, could be a possibility like a Christian Scott was last year, and he might come up in the middle of the year or later in the year to help us out. But he's expecting this guy to be at least a top 3 starter. That's what you're hoping for. And if they're not, you wouldn't use them in a trade. This has gone on for a couple of years now with our prospects, right? They try to say, oh, this guy's going to be good. They bring him up. They're not good. Brett Beatty's value's in a goddamn tank, and you probably can't trade him. So they're trying to use him in this roster. It just does not make sense, the philosophy. Either you're going to get actual players in here in rotation as a whole, get rotation guys in here that are actually good, or trade for guys. Either spend the money or use the prospects. You could do both, but I know damn sure they're not going to do both. You got to do either or. We're never going to get a really good starting pitcher in here, better than Manaea, if you're never going to give a 4+ year deal to these guys. Like, I don't care who's on the market starting pitching next year, because they're not going to do it if they're 30 or older. So what are we going to have next year? We're going to have hopefully Sproat having a great season, which would be great. But I think we're relying way too much on our farm system when half of our team are farm system guys already. Like, how many more farm system guys do we want? Right? Didn't Vientos
Farm system. Oh, you're talking about the core? You're talking about like McNeil and whatever?
Right? Alvarez. Let's say Alonso comes back. We got Nimmo. Right? I mean, it's like 6 of our guys that are homegrown. McNeil is still here. Right? It's not like, and by the way, guys, how many homegrown guys are on the Dodgers right now? Their whole rotation is bought. Like, let's not act like the Dodgers really did something great here. As soon as those prospects got big, guess what they did with them? They traded for better players. They got Mookie Betts. Right?
Well, that's the problem. Well, then that's what I'm saying. The Mets are not on that level for them to go ahead and trade and just do that. The Dodgers
had top 5 farm systems, and they were picking in the top 5 every year in the draft. For like 10 years now, they've been drafting in the 15, 19, 20 range for years. When the Mets weren't doing much at all before Steve Cohen, when they didn't have, great seasons, and they were picking in the top 10. Like, let's not act like they weren't picking over the last 5-6 seasons in top 10 area. I know the last couple of seasons they haven't, but prior to that, they have been. Like, and that's the other issue. Like, it's just the fact that, like, either you're going to completely rebuild or half-ass an offseason year after year.
I just don't think that I don't think that what's the disconnect here is that you're saying the Mets should be going to sign these guys, right? In an ideal scenario in free agency, you go sign these big name pitchers that are 30+ years old or 30 years old, right? Because again, if the Mets gave a contract out to a 30-year-old ace, I'd be fine with that.
Well, you wanted Fried, I wanted Burns, right?
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I would do that. But you have to understand that if you do that, let's just say that they did land a guy like that. That's only the Mets are not resetting any sort of tax here. So they're going to continuously lose out on that draft positioning. And it's just going to be like clockwork. So you can't achieve both here. You have to pick one or the other at this point.
If David likes his scouts and likes his way of picking players in the draft, then you should be better in drafting guys. You should be able to pick those guys in the 19 to 20 mark. Because if the Dodgers did it with their player development and their scouts, and Stearns brought in a whole new scouting department, basically, right? If you believe in those guys, then you shouldn't be worried. You should be confident that in the 19th spot, you'll be able to pick a guy that a lot of people didn't think was a top 10 and be a good draft pick to pick, or when he gets into the system, your player development makes them better than probably what he might be. So you can have the Dodgers who might not bring up all these guys, but they damn sure hype them up enough to trade them for a Mookie Betts or a Tyler Glasnow or so on and so forth. Because a lot of the Dodgers are bought or traded for. Like, let's not act like they have 5 or 6 guys that are on this team that are homegrown guys, because it's not true. They traded all of them. They traded basically half their farm system.
And they got good value back for them, right?
Correct.
And you don't do that by just
But
sending
the Mets
over.
have the top. If you're not willing to trade your top of the farm system, then you're not doing anything at all. You're not, right? Getting Tyrone Taylor and Adrian Hauser for, what was it? A Ziegler that was falling off the map in your farm system. Okay, that was okay. But again, stop talking to these teams, because you're not going to get them. It's just a waste of time. It's just a couple of words on a piece of paper just to show the fans like we're talking about Cease King when we clearly know it's not going to happen because of what the Mets are willing to do.
I think the disconnect between the way that we see this team right now is that you think that the Mets are on the Dodgers level right now, and I don't.
No, I didn't say they were on the Dodgers level, but
you were saying that they can do what the Dodgers did. You're saying that they could do what the Dodgers did, and that they should be doing what the Dodgers did to get their team right now.
Yeah, but they're also trading. Not spending. I seen the Dodgers spend big on starting pitching when they didn't need to. Like, that's crazy to me. They got Blake Snell, right? They signed Ohtani, who was going to be a pitcher this year. Like, they're getting better with their rotation. Like, I just.
They also had a little bit of luck on their side too. I mean, Yamamoto. The Mets offered Yamamoto. They were going to spend big on Yamamoto,
but he was under 30 years old. That's the big reason why they did it, right? But
they're still willing to do it. But they were still willing to do it.
They were, of course, they were. But that's all Steve Cohen. It probably wasn't David Stearns. Like, that's the other issue.
The only thing that I can.
You think the Mets would be back talking to Pete Alonso if David Stearns had the final say? Absolutely not.
Well, look at the Dodgers. Let's just say this: look at the Dodgers and look at what they did with Tyler Glasnow. Right? They sent over. I forgot what they sent over for Tyler Glasnow, but like that was a great trade. But what did he really do for the Dodgers last season? He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything for the Dodgers last season. Tyler Glasnow.
Oh yeah, I understand. I understand that. I get that.
And that's what I'm saying. Okay. I think we clearly don't agree on this topic, which is fine. We're going to
be complaining at the deadline that the Mets need starting pitching. They won't do it. Like, you're confident they were going to do it. I don't believe it at all.
At the deadline, I think so.
I'm not a top. This team's going to need a top line starter. I'm telling you that right now. I truly believe that. They're going to get a Paul Blackburn type again. That's exactly what they're going to do.
They got Paul Blackburn because they were like 4 or 5 games out of the wild card spot. You wanted them to go all in on a season where they didn't have championship caliber aspirations, and they also were 5 games back. If they're in a position that's much better at the deadline than last season, let's say they're up in the wild card standings, maybe not quite division leaders, they're gonna do what it takes. You know what I mean?
Don't you think you're contradicting the fact that with our farm system, if the farm system's not there yet, and the Mets are very much in a wild card spot or in a playoff spot at the deadline, now all of a sudden they're going to break into their farm system that's, let's be honest, is top heavy. And now they're going to do it when they could have done it this offseason to make your team better so you don't have to worry about that question mark at the deadline.
I think that a full season of either any name that we're talking about right now is going to cost as much than half a season of them.
How do we know that? If there's more teams involved. Of course.
Well, we don't know a lot of stuff that we're talking about right now, to be honest with you. This is all speculation.
If you look at the pitching market, right? Look what the Dodgers gave up for Tyler Glasnow. It was pretty decent, right? Look at that top line type of starter, right? Blake Snell didn't get traded because of the price that they were asking for, right? The fact of the matter is, we're acting like the prices are going to be lower when there's going to be a desperate team like the Mets that want him. But I guarantee you the Mets are not going to go above and beyond to get him. And then what are we going to say then? They're in a playoff spot. So what's the excuse now? They're just not willing to do it. Let's make it clear. They don't want to do it. And that's okay. But you also got to spend the money to make that the rotation better. But you're not doing that either.
So let's take a look at we're talking about like Dylan Cease and Michael King right now in the offseason, a full season's worth of sample size if they get traded to their respective team, let's say the Mets. They were talking about 2 top 10s plus to acquire that guy. Either
It's probably going to
right?
be the same.
The Dodgers just traded for Jack Flaherty. I just looked it up. They just traded for Jack Flaherty, who was one of their top line starters and was in high demand,
Sure.
this past trade deadline for a number 8 and a number 22. It took one top 10 prospect instead of multiple. So, like, I think the value diminishes, and that's kind of like, I don't know. I mean, again, I am speculating, and I'm not really sure. I'm just saying that it does really matter. And this is why I think that the Blue Jays, they're putting themselves in a little bit of trouble because they're only going to diminish Vlad Jr.'s trade value at the deadline rather than dealing him in a full season's worth of sample size this offseason. And that goes across the board. King, Cease, Vlad, Gallen, anybody. I don't know. That's my take on it. But
And we're also hoping that the Padres aren't good because the Padres are in a playoff spot. Guess who's not getting traded? Either one of those guys, right? Same thing when it goes for Luis Castillo. If the Mariners are good and they're in a play, they're not trading Luis Castillo, right? We're acting like these guys are going to be available as well. So what if one guy out of all the guys we're talking about are available? Guess how many teams are going after him? You don't think that price is going to go up just based on competitiveness? Like, we're really hoping that multiple guys that are willing to get, not Paul Blackburn types, like King, Cease, Castillo, those type of guys are available. Like, we're hoping that happens. There's a possibility that these teams actually might be in playoff spots and not willing to trade those guys. And then what? And then we're going to be sitting around talking about another Paul Blackburn. Like, it's silly to me. It really is, because instead of, if it's going to take two top 15 prospects now, let's say if it's Gilbert and let's say two top 10 prospects.
Top 10.
Two top 10 prospects right now, plus Jose Butto, right? Let's say if you cut Jose Butto from that because it's half the season as a rental, it's probably going to be very similar in cost for prospects.
No.
I would think.
Because you're talking about number 3 and number 10, right? Versus a top 10, probably maybe let's say the number 7 or number 8. Maybe you could say Ronnie Mauricio because he's right there at 5, 6, 7, right there.
Okay, that's fine.
About like number 18 or 19.
So if the Braves need a starting pitcher, let's say the Cubs don't get any of these guys. Let's say the Padres don't like any of their offers. Let's say the Cubs need a starting pitcher. The Braves need a starting pitcher. These are teams that are not going to spend money on starting pitching, clearly, that need it. They have better farm system than the New York Mets. We're going to outbid these teams? No, we're not.
And so it's a moot point. It's a non-point at that point. If you cannot outbid those teams in general, you're not getting them in general. So why are we complaining about something that's not even possible? It's not possible.
My point exactly. It's not possible.
Okay. So is that David Stearns' fault at that point for even just trying to inquire about it? The only point is here, the only valid point is that the Mets should have signed pitching help.
Correct.
They should have signed pitching help. That's really the only argument that I would be willing to accept at this point. That's the only one. Because, again, we just saw how the Crochet trade sweepstakes played out. The Mets were in on Crochet, right? They didn't want to give up Williams and whatever, but they were never going to outbid the Boston Red Sox at that point. As soon as the Boston Red Sox entered those trade conversations, they were done. The Mets were done. And it's hard because guess what? That goes back to my original point. The Mets farm system, it's not conducive for David Stearns having the best assets possible to wheel and deal and make these trades. And he's already operating at a disadvantage because of what he was given.
Agree. And that's why we both wanted to spend money on starting pitching, better starting pitching. You wanted Fried, I wanted Burns. Again, it's counterintuitive to what if you don't want to give up prospects, you're trying to fill our heads with nonsense when it comes to Montas and all these other, Clay Holmes, who's a freaking bullpen arm, Griffin Cannon, Tyler McGill, right? We're not like, it's just silly. Like, you can't, if you're not doing one, do the other. That's what doesn't make sense. Like, we got too many question marks and reclamation projects to tell me that I don't think we're confident enough in the starting rotation. I think we can agree with that, right? Can we see the upside in it? Absolutely. But when you're trying to win and you got to Game 6 of the NLCS last year, right? I don't believe I can't say we're not better, but that's hard to say. I think we could be, but there's teams in our division that are just as good as last year, probably just as good. So we have to catch up to them. We were third in the NL East last year. Just because we beat the Braves and we beat the Phillies doesn't mean we're technically better than them right now. Nobody's better than the Dodgers. I can argue that the Padres still have enough to be a very good team. So we're talking about a third place wildcard team right now. Second or third place
we're
wildcard
not.
team.
We're talking about a team that is
I don't know.
number 3 in the National League. They're better than the Phillies. They're better than the Padres. The Braves and the Dodgers still have them
Well, how
beat.
can you say they're better
Let's
than the
not
Phillies
discredit this
when
team for
they
what
won
it
7
is
more
right
games
now
than
on
us?
paper, Rob. Listen, my bottom line question to you at the end of the day, do you trust David Stearns or not? You said time and time again
I have to.
that you trusted
I don't
David
have a
Stearns.
choice.
No. Do you or not? Yes or no?
I do.
Oh, but that's not what I'm hearing right now.
But that's not what. But just because I don't agree doesn't mean I don't trust them.
I don't know, but you're saying that we are for sure going to be talking about a rotation
Absolutely.
that is not cutting it at the deadline. So that's not trusting what he's doing with this rotation.
Well, it's already done. How can I trust him when he already did what he did?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You don't trust
him. I don't believe the Flaherty
philosophy.
nonsense. I don't believe the cease and king. Like, he made the call and he was probably hanging up while he was talking to the Padres because it's a silly conversation because even he knows he's not going to do it. Like,
if the Mets signed Jack Flaherty, would you be happy?
I'd shut up.
You'd be.
I would. I would be excited too, because it's the best possible scenario for the Mets at the moment. It's the easier scenario. Jack Flaherty should be a New York Met already. Listen, if it's between Jack Flaherty or Pete Alonso, I take Jack Flaherty. And the reason why, because I think the offense is good enough.
Okay. At least I heard you say something's good enough with the Mets. That's all I wanted out of this whole entire stream. Listen, Rob, Listen, Rob, I appreciate this is what's so fun about being a Mets fan and a baseball fan in general is that we don't have to agree on everything at this point. And I think that the Mets are in a very tricky situation because, again, even going back to the beginning of last offseason, I always said that they're going to find themselves with how much traffic is in this farm system. They're going to find themselves in a tough spot trying to figure out who to trade versus not. I still think that they're going to deal these prospects at some point. Just because we're not seeing it right now doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I still truly believe that. And I will believe that until it gets to like maybe 2-3 years down the road. And we're talking about all these prospects being the farm system, but it's not logistically possible at this point. So again, I think they're trying to build up the farm system and then deal at that point. I get it. It's Mets fans aren't really patient. We're not really trying to hear that right now, but I think that's what the strategy they're going down. And we just have to wait and see. Again, we just have to wait and see. So I don't know. One more reliever. I don't think it's happening.
We talked about the reliever. We don't think another reliever is coming. We would be excited if another one is coming, like a Tim Hill. But we can pass over that topic. Obviously, the bench outlook right now, right? Is it still Iglesias? Couldn't they be looking after Kiki Hernandez? I think Kiki Hernandez is probably out of their price range at this point because I think Kiki Hernandez could get a 2-year deal from somewhere. I don't think the Mets are going to do that. So I kind of think that it's going to be a Jose Iglesias marriage, so to speak, unless Scott Boras tries to try to get a 2-year deal out of the Mets, because then that's not going to happen either. But what do you think the bench outlook is going to be? Do you think Iglesias is probably the most likely guy? Because you need a super utility guy in this infield. Even if Acuna is going to be on this team, what are your thoughts on that, real quick?
I don't know. I think it all depends on Pete Alonso because, again, if the Mets miss out on Pete Alonso, they'll probably go the utility guy in Jose Iglesias or someone of that caliber that's on the market still. But if they get Pete Alonso, I think they're done. I think that Pete Alonso is the addition and that's it. And the bench is going to be what it is. I mean, you're going to have probably Brett Beatty making this team. You're probably going to see Luis Angel Acuna on the bench as well, and he probably could serve as that utility guy. But also Jeff McNeil is this is all I hear from Mets fans at this point is Jeff McNeil is a utility man. He can play everywhere. So let's see it at this point. I think he plays a subpar outfield. He plays a decent second base, nothing special. But at that point, if Mets fans think he's a utility man, let's see them utilize him as such. But I think that if Pete Alonso is the guy, that's it. That's all they're doing. Pete Alonso.
You don't think they're going to bring Iglesias here?
No.
Oh, wow.
No. If they send Pete Alonso, I think Jose Iglesias is done. It's done. It's over. That's what I think.
Ooh, okay. All right. So let's finish up with rapid fire time. I know Chris got to get the heck out of here, and I kind of blabbered in my mouth for an hour just to let him stay a little longer. Sorry about that, Chris. I apologize.
Oh, you're good, man. I like it. This is an animated conversation. I feel like we had to have at least a stream or a couple streams in a row where we disagree, because every time, since we started doing content, it's like agree. We've been on the same wavelength, but now we're entering this realm where things get serious, contending, hopes are on the line, and it's okay not to agree. It really is.
It's all right. Joey Meneses, first baseman of the future, baby. Let's go. All right. So my rapid fire question to you is just basically this. If it's not Pete Alonso, who is going to be playing first base for the New York? Because I know I asked you that the last time as my rapid fire question, but now it seems possible Pete Alonso's back and the Mountcastle Torco season kind of took a back burner. Right now, January 30th, who's playing first base for the New York Mets?
I would hope. Right now, if Pete Alonso is not a Met, or if he's still,
let's say Pete Alonso is out of the question.
Okay, I think Pete's coming back. I will say that on record, but I will say if Pete Alonso's out of the question, I think Mark Vientos is at first base, and they make the deal to bring Jose Iglesias back, which is, I think Jose Iglesias that decision is riding on what happens with Pete Alonso. I do not think David Stearns is rolling with Brett Beatty as an everyday third baseman to start 2025. That's where I draw the line. If that's the plan, that's where I draw the line. I'd rather see Jose Iglesias. Hell, I'd rather see Luis Angel Acuna at third base over Brett Beatty at that point. So I think Pete Alonso, I will be very adamant. I have a giveaway, by the way, on my channel. If you guys are watching this, whether you're on Rob's channel or not, everyone's included in this. Subscribe to the channel. In the community tab, comment LGM under one of my posts. You'll see if you scroll down. It's a couple posts down. If Pete Alonso re-signs with the Mets, I'm doing a giveaway. So enter that. One lucky winner if it happens. But yeah, I think it's going to be Mark Vientos. If it's not Pete Alonso, I think it's Vientos, unfortunately, even though I would rather see the Mets just make a deal for Mountcastle. I'm good on Spencer Torkelson. I don't want that. I don't want that.
Right. Can't wait for the Nick Pivetta Beatty offseason, baby. Yes.
I would say, okay, so my rapid fire question to you is, given this Michael King, Dylan Cease situation, I know that you don't think a trade is going to happen. I know that you've been very adamant about you willing to do, right? That trade right there. First of all, I think you're going to say yes to that, right? But you said Jose Butto was a no-go for you. So who would you replace in that deal if it's not Jose Butto?
I would see what it's hard to pick a player, but I think Jose Butto is kind of untouchable at this point because he's important, really important to the Mets. I would think, you know what? I throw in another prospect, another top line prospect. I would, because
top 10?
Sure. Look, I'm so sick of prospects at this point because everybody wants homegrown talent on this team. Like, how many more do you want? Like, do you want all 9 players to be homegrown talent? Because that's the way it sounds like a lot of Met fans want. Like, they're not willing to trade. Every time we put up any type of deal for any Mets content creator or anybody on SOY putting up a trade, right away everybody's like, "What are you, crazy?" Like, Met fans are not willing to do it. Like, that's the other issue as well. Like, at some point, you got to give to get. You can't lowball. Everybody like, "Oh, why don't you give him Tyler McGill?" Nobody wants him.
Exactly. I agree.
And that's the issue. Like, I'm willing to do it at this point. Dylan Cease can probably make between a 4 or 5 game difference in total record than what the Mets have right now. That's a fact. He would make a difference, right? Every 5th day, you have a chance to win. I'm sorry. I'm not confident Kodai Senga every 5th, or let me calm down, every 6th day with Kodai Senga, right? I'm not even that confident in David Peterson. I'm not sure about David Peterson coming back after a full year or almost 170 innings coming off a hip injury. Like, there's not a lot of confidence here. I know Dylan Cease is going to give you 180 innings and a badass start almost every time out. Like, he's going to make a 5 to 6 game difference. If you think this team is a 89 to 91 win team right now, he can make it a 94, 95 win team easily. Like, that's a huge difference. Like, right now, if you don't do it and leave your rotation the way it is, like, you're not doing much more than what you were last year. And 89 to 90 wins is probably not going to be enough. It's going to be very close to a third wild card, to be quite honest with you. So I would add in third prospect just to answer your question.
Yeah, and I have a follow-up question, but I'm going to say that as it pertains to Zach Scott, I really do think, Dylan Cease is one thing. I agree with that. I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to take it's going to take a little bit more of a heftier return for Dylan Cease. But I mean, even for Michael King, I don't know, man. I can't see the Padres or
I
any
wouldn't do
other
it for King.
team. I don't think any other team is entertaining a price that high from the Padres. I don't. The Cubs are not going to entertain it. I don't think the Braves are going to entertain it. I don't think other teams are stupid. I don't think that they're desperate, to be honest.
I think King can be possible because I think you can get for a little bit less, and I think that's when Stern's willing to do it. If it's one top 7 to 10 and another top 15 prospect, I think he'd be willing to do it because it's not into that sexy range, so to speak. I think they're gonna realize really quick because I think they can get a lot for Dylan Cease. Like I would do what I said for Dylan Cease. I'm not giving 3 prospects for King. I'm not even doing Jose Butil, Gilbert, and Tong for King. I think that's a little insane for a guy who's pitched 1 year as a starter, basically. Yeah. But we'll see. I hope it happens. Trust me, I hope it happens. I'm not confident in it happening, but we'll see.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
If I had to pick one of the two, I would say definitely Michael King over Cease in terms of the reality standpoint, right? Like what's the most realistic? My second question to you is just as a follow-up on the rotation, you know, I think David Stearns was talking about the prospects even today in a quote or how just recently. And he said that Brandon Sproat is going to make an impact for this team sometime in 2025. So he is going to basically be the Christian Scott 2.0. Let's hope without the injury standpoint, because I can't wait to see him back in 2026 after he recovers. Christian Scott, that is. When do you think Brandon Sproat, you know, if we're not confident in this rotation, if we think that it's going to take another arm, they're going to bring this guy up, especially if he's going to be starting at AAA. When do you think it happens?
Which I would be fine with. Like I think, but again, don't handcuff yourself with innings because it's going to be a waste of time, just like Christian Scott was, because it was a waste of time. You got him hurt because you rushed him, and you needed more out of him than you got. I'm going to say it's going to be fairly early because I don't think this rotation is going to be good in the beginning. Then we're going to be talking about the same problems we did last year. I think it's going to be probably June. I think it's going to be fairly early. I think that this rotation is going to struggle. I think we're going to be a little shocked that David Peterson is not going to be as good as he was last year. Montas is going to give you what he gives you. I think even if Minaya is very solid, what we expect from him, I don't think you can trust Kodai Senga enough. I don't think Kodai Senga is going to be as good as everybody thinks coming off an injury. He needs everything to be perfect to pitch that day, and I'm not confident he's going to do that. He's another Jacob deGrom. He's got to feel 100% to go out there on the mound. I think that's a huge problem for the Mets. That's why they're doing a 6-man rotation to try to keep this guy happy and healthy. And I'm just not confident. How about this? You want to hear a crazy thing? I'm more confident that Clay Holmes will pitch better than Montas or Kodai Senga, because I think Clay Holmes has a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, so, I mean, I can see that. I think Senga has a bounce back year. I don't think it's going to be anything like what he posted his first
bounce back year is that he stays healthy. Even if he doesn't pitch well, it's better than last year.
Correct. Know? Yeah, availability is the best strength any player in this league can have. Yeah, I think it's a good stream. And by the way, I see people commenting LGM in the live chat. You got to go on my community tab on my channel because that's how I can backtrack and see, how many people and who the usernames are on my channel, community tab, not in the live chat, comment LGM. One lucky subscriber, if Pete Alonso resigns with the Mets, will get a jersey. Well, they'll get contacted, get your size, and I'll send it right to you. And you'll get a free Pete Alonso merchandise. So I appreciate it. It was a good stream, Rob. I appreciate you as always. Let's go Mets. It's going to be okay, guys. Let me just tell you this right now. I don't know if Rob's going to back this sentiment, right? Given the whole situation of, the mood and the tone of how we've been talking about this team. But I promise you, it's going to be okay. This team is going to be fine. And they are a top 3 NL team right now. I'm very confident in that. And you can question it. I truly believe it. Let's go Mets.
The offense going to carry them. LGM on the community page to win that Pete Alonso jersey. What is it?
Jersey. Yes.
Jersey. There you go. I got both of them wrong. Jersey on the community page, guys. LGM if Pete Alonso signs. So, guys, thank you for watching another Mets Hot Stove episode 32 in the books. Next time we probably speak on a hot stove, it's probably going to be February. So, with that said, guys, have a great night. Let's go Mets. And we'll see you next time on the Hot Stove Show. Good night, guys.
Let's go Mets.
the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Comebacks in the night, keep dreams alive.